Hi, welcome to City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Mike, welcome. We'll stretch across the table there. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Walt.
It's actually nice and cool here in the studio compared to outside, isn't it?
Sure
Which is usually the other way around.
Never complain about the summer heat, never.
And for our viewers, Michael has brought two guests with him today. We have Brian Ailes, who is City Municipal Director of Finances. Brian, welcome to the show.
Good to see you all. Thank you.
And also Mr. Scott Dunlap, and Scott is a principal and partner with AI3 Architects. Scott, welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you all.
And in case our viewers have not discerned yet, the topic of today's show will be the middle school project. And I'm going to start with you, Mike, and maybe you can give us an idea of how long this has been in the works. It's been going on for quite some time, and kind of give us your perspective on it. And I'm going to ask our control room to queue up slides 6 and 7 in group 1 as Michael is making his comments.
Sure.
Mike?
Thanks, Walt. Yeah, this is an exciting time. It really is. This is the culmination of about a 25-year commitment that the city has made to modernize all of our schools, to bring our schools into the 21st century, to ensure that we can deliver the education that our kids need and the education the community needs. The stronger the educational system, the better the community, the more young graduates who will be ready for the best jobs, and the higher our property values go. But this project is the culmination, as I said. Through the 90s and into the early 2000s, the city upgraded and expanded on all of our elementary schools, and then we built the high school, and now the middle school is the last piece. It's been several years that the city has been looking at this project, and specifically how to configure the grades. Been looking at a grade 5 to 8 configuration for several years, and about a year and a half ago, Mayor being a member of the school committee, I, along with my colleagues on the school committee, undertook a public process, engaged the community, and decided that the 5 to 8 model for our middle school is the right one. It's one that a lot of top-notch school districts in our area employ, and it's also one that brings great opportunities to our younger students. So in having made that decision, we were able to go full steam ahead with this 5 to 8 middle school, knowing that not only will it deliver us the facility we need for our middle school kids, it will also at the same time solve our overcrowding challenges that we face at the elementary school level.
Very good. And I'd like to ask Scott, and for our viewers there who've been watching BevCam and our coverage of the school building committee, they've seen Scott give his presentations in front of that committee quite frequently in the last few months. And Scott, I'm going to ask you to kind of walk us through the planning process from your perspective. What has that consisted of? And perhaps I'd like to cue our control room, Group 1, Slide 1, as Scott is giving his comments. Scott?
Sure. Certainly there was a lot of planning, just as Mayor Cahill mentioned, before we got involved. But since our specific involvement, beginning just over a year ago, there are really 3 major steps that we have participated with the city and the building committee on, and they involve allowing the city to engage the Massachusetts School Building Authority, who is the city's funding partner, important funding partner in this project, in a very specific process that ensures that the city, should they proceed with this project, would receive reimbursement grant funding for the project. And the 3 steps, as they identify them, are preliminary design program, which we completed beginning last summer in about 3 to 4 months, and then a preferred schematic phase, where essentially the city commits to a particular project, and then the phase that we've just completed, the schematic design phase. And each of those phases is very important. The preliminary design program is just us as an architectural firm taking a look at the buildings, the sites, all the works that's been done previously, the city's proposed educational program, for example, and assembling all that documentation in a way that the Massachusetts School Building Authority can evaluate it and assist the city in making good decisions. Their goal is to clearly, as your partner, ensure that it's a fiscally responsible and educationally appropriate project. And so in each of those three steps, they have continued to evaluate the submittals, approve the submittals, and allow the city to continue to proceed forward over the last year, approximately a year.
Mm-hmm. And so as far as the timing of all these, when did AI3 get involved, and what's the timeline that you've been involved with so far?
We were invited to begin participating in the project in the summer of 2014, so we've been on board just over a year now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, let me add to that if I could. Well, we feel incredibly fortunate that we've hired a team. Our project manager, Hiri International, our architect, AI3, and our construction manager, Agostini and Bacon. In all three cases, we were able to get exactly the firm, the outfit that we wanted. And that's not a guarantee when you go into this process. And we feel we've got an incredibly talented professional team that to date has helped us save money, to date has helped us meet and exceed our timelines, and is going to do that throughout the project and deliver an incredibly outstanding. So we're excited about this. Believe me, this is top notch.
So you got your 3 first-round draft choices in that sense, right?
Absolutely did. Yeah.
So let me ask you. I'll follow up with you, Mike. So where are we right now, and what happens next? And maybe our control room can put up Group 1, Slide 2 at the same time you're speaking, Mike. What happens now? Where are we?
Well, so we sit here taping this on August 18th, and next week. The city will present to the city council at a special meeting a request to fund the project. At their September 8th meeting, the council is expected to act on that. And that is an approval by the council of all the money necessary to build the school. A lot of that money will be reimbursed by the state, but we're required by law to put, to approve the full amount. What we've done is that the feasibility study phase that we've just completed, as I said, we've completed ahead of schedule, and we're ready to move forward. In order to not lose time, we're looking to do these 2 steps in September. City Council approval of the funding, then the state board at the MSBA votes their approval of the funding, and then we move full steam into the design development that Scott can talk about. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the importance here is that the plan is the design development documents are developed over the next few months. We get Agostini and Bacon on site at Memorial to begin tearing down the Memorial building, because as you know, the project is to be a tear down and complete new construction. Right. Earlier in the process, we looked at several different options for renovation and addition, and they all cost more than an entirely new construction. And they didn't deliver the best quality school either. So the plan is to tear down Memorial in January, do the substructure work, because this school will be built, the surface it's built on requires strong supports down into the bedrock. So that'll happen in the spring months into the summer, and then next fall we've got to erect the structural steel of the building. All of this is on a tight timetable, because if we lose a couple months between now and then, we could lose that whole next winter of 2016-17. If we lose that, then we could lose the following winter. I've said this before. I took office in January of 2014, and within a couple of weeks, we met with MSBA and found out that in order to get this thing built and open by September 2018, we need to be obviously as thorough as possible, but as quick as possible at the same time about moving through the steps. And by doing so, we save time, which saves money, and we don't run the risk of significant construction work or the wrong kind of construction work during the winter months that could threaten the quality of that work.
Yeah. And I'm gonna turn to Scott in a second here to kind of flesh out that for us. Mm-hmm. But I want to. You mentioned several times the Massachusetts School Building Authority and how they are your funding partner. And maybe for our viewers, you could explain. They don't give us just 50%, but they could give us incrementally more based upon certain kinds of factors. Can you kind of elucidate for our viewing audience what those factors are and how the city has tried to leverage those things to get as much from the state as we can?
Sure, and Scott can speak to this better than I can, but so I'll just touch on it quickly and then turn to him. There's a base reimbursement percentage that they suggest they're going to give to us based on our demographics. So Beverly's base reimbursement level is supposed to be about 52%. Then you can add, you build a building that's more energy efficient, you get percentage points. We decided to go the construction manager at risk route, which brought the construction manager on board earlier and holds a lot of opportunity to move the timeline more quickly while delivering quality, and we get a percentage point added for that. So we're hoping that the percentage in total will be about 56, 57%. And I should probably turn to Scott at that point. He can flesh it out.
Okay, so Scott, the mayor has kind of given us the broad kind of view of what's happening in the future. So specifically, what's happening now? What will you be working on next?
Well, then the very next step for us, pending City Council approval, is, as the mayor described, just to move into design development. Our goal is to prepare the design development documents and the construction documents to actually get the project built as quickly as possible, because just as Mayor Cahill identified, we have a very specific construction schedule that the construction manager has provided to us, bought into, that allows the city to save a substantial amount of money based on the timing of construction, avoiding winter conditions and the impact of having to construct certain portions of the project in the winter. So our goal is to get underway with design development as quickly as possible. And one of the things that the city and members of the community will hear mentioned frequently with regard to the MSBA is a project scope and budget agreement. And the reason the City Council vote is so important is because the project scope and budget agreement is essentially the contract that the city will execute with the MSBA. So far, it's just an agreement with the MSBA that you can study a possible project, but that project scope and budget agreement takes all of the documentation that's been developed so far and says, at least from the MSBA's perspective, yes, City of Beverly, we believe you have a great project, a great educational plan, very fiscally responsible, and we want to be your partner. And that, in order to enter into that contract, the MSBA requires the City Council to make this commitment to the project that they'll be taking a vote on shortly, and so that the MSBA knows that the city is committed to the same project that the MSBA is committed to.
Right, and all of these documents then, by reference, become part of that agreement.
That is exactly right, Walt.
Okay, yeah. Now let me. I want to bring up a subject here that I'm going to ask both of you, Mike and Scott, to comment on. There was one dissenting vote on the school building committee that voted against submitting the schematic to the state. With reference that it's not affordable, and this person proposed a different design. Maybe you can explain what that different design was, or what the thoughts were behind that, and what your thoughts are on that alternate plan. Mike, maybe you can start us off on that.
Well, as you said, our Citizen Middle School Building Committee voted 20-1 to submit the schematic design to the state, and I suspect the other 6 members who weren't in attendance that night probably would have voted in favor as well. So the one person who suggested that it's not the right way to go has also suggested that instead of building this middle school, that instead we put our pre-K and kindergartners at Memorial, we put the 6th graders into the elementary school, so we have grades 1 through 6 in our elementaries, and we build a 7th and 8th grade wing at the high school. Here, yeah. Which and is suggesting that would be cheaper and better for the community. Well, it really falls down on all fronts. It's not better for the community. It's not consistent with our educational plan. It doesn't work for the kids. It doesn't work financially either, because we've done some analysis of this thought, and to put the pre-K and kindergarten kids in at Memorial would cost somewhere in the order of $12 million or more. To build a 7th and 8th grade wing or new 2-grade school, middle school at the high school, would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 to $77 million. And then, having put the 6th graders into the elementary schools, we would not have solved any of the overcrowding issues because we would still be about 225, 230 students short at the elementaries. In other words, we'd be cramming kids into the elementaries beyond the guidelines that MSBA says it makes sense, and we would continue to have that overcrowding problem, which would mean eventually we'd probably have to do a couple of elementary school additions. Not to mention that it doesn't work for the kids, it doesn't deliver the education they need, and it's going to cost at least as much, if not more, than what we're doing here. It will also take several years longer. If, for example, the city reversed course at this point in the project, MSBA would likely, this is what they've told us, they'd likely kind of take us out of line, put us to the side, and say, if you want any kind of reimbursements on this, you're going to have to start at the beginning, apply, compete with a lot of other school districts who are trying to get into the program, and start over. Likely taking about 7 years or longer from initial application on anything new and different to the finish line. So right now we're planning to be at Briscoe for 3 more years. The suggestion that was put forward would have us at Briscoe for 7 or more years.
So essentially you're saying we would lose our place in the queue.
And we wouldn't be guaranteed to get back in the queue. We'd have to win them over with this. I don't even want to call it a plan, because the level of detail and thoroughness and professionalism and scrutiny that's gone into what's in front of us today, the plan for this new 5 to 8 middle school in Beverly, is what's supposed to happen when you are thoughtful and responsible about investing public dollars in meeting a community's need. This kind of thrown against the wall to see if it sticks, idea that just doesn't make sense for the community really doesn't hold up as soon as you start looking at it.
Well, I'm gonna ask Scott to comment on reusing Memorial, which is part of this alternate plan. But first, I want to turn to Brian for a second, because there's been talk about the fact that this new project is not sustainable from the city's carrying the debt and so on and so forth. And I know you've done quite a bit of analysis on the city and how much debt we'll be carrying and our. So can you kind of, and I like our control room to put up the capital expenditure slide, and maybe Bryant, you can speak to that.
Sure, happy to. There's a few pieces that we look at when we talk about affordability. One is the overall cost of the project. Our experts that we have on board and the school building committee has done considerable work to refine those cost estimates to a point where we're looking at the net cost to the city at about just over $60 million. We know that as we go further and further through this process that there'll be additional opportunities to further refine that cost. But I can say that the $60 million that we're looking at right now is affordable within the city's means. And there's really 3 components to that affordability. There's first that we've been mindful of this coming, and we've been planning for this, not just this administration, but the previous administration. We've got just over $6 million in reserves, including the proceeds from the McKay School, and those can be utilized towards this project. We also know with certainty what our debt obligations look like for years to come. And we know what projects that we're currently paying for that happened decades ago. The cost of those will be falling off of the city's books, essentially, creating capacity to bring on new debt. And then the last piece, as kind of a last resort, is we've got a very responsible budget that we're operating with now that the mayor's put forth for FY16, and we've been conscious to build in certain release valves within that budget, so that should the need arise, not that we anticipate it, but if the need does arise, we've got areas to rely on and reshift into some costs associated with the debt.
And I'd like to ask our control room to put the capital slide back up again once more, and I'd like you, Bryant, for our viewers, looking at that slide, tell us what you'd like our viewers to come away with. What's important about that slide? Well,
you can see the green arrow kind of, it demonstrates how the debt obligation reduces year after year for the city. So the debt we're paying today in this budget, FY16, is significantly different than what the debt will be like in FY20 forward. So we also know that when we begin the heavy phase of construction within this project, that we don't assume the costs right away for that. They typically lag the project by a year or 2 years, depending upon the timing of when you go to permanently bond those costs. So we know that we can layer in those debt costs within this schedule that you see before you now.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Brian. And let me turn back again to Scott. The memorial building, now that was built what, in the 50s, I believe.
That's correct.
And so tell us about the potential reusability of the memorial building. What state is it in right now?
Well, as part of our preliminary design program work, the MSBA required us to evaluate all available school facilities within the city, and that certainly included memorial. So there's a very comprehensive report that our engineers and our designers and our staff put together that focuses specifically on memorial as a possibility for reuse. Because keep in mind that when we came to this project, there was no preconceived notion regarding what the best proposed project would be. There were multiple options evaluated during those first two phases, preliminary design and then the preferred schematic. And so when we were evaluated memorial, we found and identified for the MSBA a lot of improvements that would have to occur there in order to make that a sustainable educational facility. And they included mechanical upgrades, electrical upgrades, plumbing upgrades, building envelope upgrades, accessibility issues. Certainly that building has a number of challenges to meet, not only mass access, but the ADA federal requirements for accessibility. The exterior building composition in terms of the building envelope doesn't meet the new energy code requirements. There are a number of issues that would have to be addressed. There's no elevator to function for vertical access in the building. All those things were identified in the report. And when we identified the cost associated with improving memorial to make it a viable educational facility, and we're talking about long-term viability, it was clear that it would be more expensive to try to get it ready to serve in the future than it would be to construct a new building. And also understand that the MSBA's architectural staff, engineering staff, and consultants had to review that report and agree with it. And that's the reason we ultimately came to the conclusion that the most cost-effective, educationally appropriate solution was to demolish the memorial and build a new school. So at this point in time, suggesting, although no matter how well-intentioned the suggestion may be, suggesting that it is a viable candidate for use as an educational facility contradicts everything that the MSBA has already reviewed, supported, and agreed with. And certainly, if the city were to decide to do that, there's an enormous expenditure associated with occupying that facility as a viable educational facility.
Yeah, very, very well put. Now I want to revisit again so our viewers understand, if the city did change course now and take this Plan B that's been proposed, how long would that take to implement, and what would be the effect of that? And Mike, you want to
oh, absolutely. And I do want to touch on this whole idea of doing something on this campus at the high school. But first, we have been approved at this point, and moving closer to project funding agreement, in large part because the MSBA agreed with our educational plan, our plan for how we're going to deliver education in the 21st century to our students. This suggestion just flips it all on its head. So, it looks to it looks to a site that hasn't even been examined, the high school campus. So it would need to start over.
Yeah.
And as I said, we've been told that we would be kind of dropped out of the program, and we would need to go back to the start were we to look at doing something as different from what we're planning currently as that suggestion calls for. So we'd be back at the start. A lot of communities are trying to get in the front door MSBA does not have the resources that, that we might think they need to do all the projects that are out there, to meet all the demand. So it would be, and the thought that they would rush to jump us in line ahead of anybody else when we've already been this far down the line, and are then now turning our backs on the work that we've done. That can't happen. It would be, as I said, 7 years or more. If I could just touch on what's suggested for this campus.
Absolutely, yeah.
The thought that we could put, we have a school here that was built for 1,300 students and has about 1,400 in it here at the high school.
But before you go, Mike, so the alternate plan calls for building a 7th and 8th grade here on the campus of the existing high school. So just so our viewers know okay.
If we were to do that, we would be adding another 750 students to a campus that has its limits. We would be increasing by 50% the number of students on this property. And MSBA, if we were to do that, would not even consider reimbursement or participating in paying for it unless we built all the support facilities needed. So we don't just build classrooms. We need to build a new gym, a new cafeteria, a new media technology center, a new auditorium, new band and choral space, new administrative space. We would need to build parking sufficient for all the new employees and visitors who would come to this campus. And in doing all that, adding all those educational support facilities would ratchet up the cost to the point where, as I said, it's likely would likely be in the neighborhood of $75 to $77 million, and it would require that we bulldoze a lot of our current playing space to build the wing and to build the parking. We already have high school athletic teams that are playing off campus. That we don't have space for on this campus. And we would be adding 750 more kids and displacing more of our outdoor athletic needs. And we would then have to build more athletic facilities off-site. So you add it all up, and it makes no sense at all for us.
So what you're saying is that it's not as one-dimensional as just providing classroom space for 7th and 8th grades. All that other infrastructure and support, it would have to be beefed up and changed to accommodate those as well.
And there are incredible benefits to a 5 to 8 middle school that would be out the window. And now you're putting 7th and 8th graders over here with 11th and 12th graders.
Well, let me ask you kind of a general question. I know you're very excited about this. Maybe you can tell our viewers what kind of most excites you about the new middle school, this whole project, and what the city is doing, Mike.
Let me say one thing and then turn it to Scott, because Scott's built. He's designed and assisted in building a lot of schools, and this is really my first. But I'll say the opportunity to put 5th graders together with 6th, and 5th graders are really more developmentally closer to 6th graders than they are to 4th. You put 5th and 6th graders together, you put 7th and 8th graders together within one school, but within separate learning academies. You're able to provide much more robust and stronger academic opportunities to those younger students in foreign languages, in science, technology, engineering, and math, in drama. You're able to provide extracurriculars that you don't provide for that age group right now. We could and we will plan to implement extracurricular programming for 5 and 6 together and 7 and 8 together, be it athletics, be it drama, student government, all of that. But back to the academics. I mean, there's so much more you can do with the economies of scale of bringing all the 5th graders to one place, and with putting 5th and 6th together. I'll stop there because Scott knows all this better than I do and can elaborate.
Well, Scott, let me ask you that. Tell us how this new design will deliver these 21st century education objectives that are articulated in the education plan. I mean, you can talk about maker spaces and project-based learning and things like that. And I'll ask our controller maybe to put up slides while Scott is talking 6 and 7 in group 1. Scott, give us an outline on that.
Sure. I think, I think all those terms, we talk about 21st century educational environments, we talk about project-based learning, and I think they can be confusing for anyone who hasn't been inside of a modern middle school, because I've been doing this for 25 years I've had chances to and opportunities to design schools all over the world. Our firm has designed more schools than any firm in New England. And we think it's the most exciting time to be designers of educational facilities, because for the first time ever, there's absolutely indisputable evidence that yes, teachers will always be the most important component to any school facility, but the bricks and mortar, the physical learning environment, definitely has a measurable impact on teaching and learning and our ability to make successful students and make successful adults. And it's because the successful adult in the 21st century is not just the learner who knows math or can state historical facts, or has an in-depth knowledge of science or certain aspects of science. The successful adult in the 21st century, and all of the experts agree with this, is the collaborator, the presenter, the problem solver. And schools for many years have not been designed to give students the opportunity to do hands-on project-based learning, where the students can exhibit their work, the students can collaborate on their work, the students have opportunities to professionally present their work. And if you think about a school as being just confined to a series of classrooms where everybody's isolated, that is not a 21st century learning environment, because there aren't opportunities for collaboration. There aren't opportunities for students to get together and work on projects. There aren't opportunities for students to learn how to professionally present their work and get input from other students. And so when we organize these 21st century learning environments, they still have classrooms, but they have maker spaces, they have project spaces, they have hands-on learning environments, they have opportunities for students to learn visually, tactily. You have to think about all the different ways a student can learn. And the staff and administration in the Beverly Public School System understand all of these things, but for years they've been restricted by a building that was intended to teach students of a different era, where there was a less of a focus on all these things that we now know make for a successful adult. And I think when we create that environment, when you see the way that environment's organized and you see the way the spaces are organized and you see the new spaces for learning, it really is shocking to go into a modern environment. And it's exciting. As we see the results of the staff and administration occupying these new facilities, there's a measured difference, not only in what they're learning, but how they're learning and their attitude about being in the space.
Yeah, and I would just, excuse me, like to comment on that BevCam, we ourselves have collaborated with the school in teaching media to the kids. And in the last 4 or 5 years, that whole collaboration has been wildly successful. And I think, as they say, the proof in the pudding is the fact that they're winning regional and national awards for the products that they're creating, these TV shows and these video productions. In fact, I just got back from LA last week, and I picked up 3 first place awards that the BHS media students won. So if there's any testament to how successful that kind of learning experience that you just articulated is, it is really, it's right there.
Walt, if I could, I want to ask Scott to elaborate on one other thing, because you're absolutely right on all that, and the Briscoe faculty and students do amazing things, and they're so incredibly excited about what's to come. Could you, Scott, just touch on the indoor-outdoor connections and the outdoor learning opportunities that we're envisioning for the new school?
Sure. One of the and Walt, I can't pass up on the opportunity to say that media is one of those visual and hands-on learning opportunities that for years students that had talent in that area sometimes never even knew it because they didn't have those opportunities. So when I talk about varying opportunities to learn in different ways, media happens to be one of those that many districts have seen students that were identified as being, quiet, maybe not super high academic achievers, have found their niche and found that they can achieve on incredible levels professionally just because they don't like math doesn't mean they don't have incredible talents in some areas, and some are going on to have careers in broadcasting. You know, the possibilities are limitless, and that's just one very small area. To the mayor's question, you know, there are many different kinds of opportunities, and I want to articulate it. I want to articulate it well. So just to be clear, you know, tell me exactly what you're targeting, what you're thinking there, Mr. Mayor, when you say it.
Well, there are a lot of indoor-outdoor connections that we're looking for, you know, in light and in natural light
Right.
and such. But there's also the outdoor spaces that we're
Yeah,
creating
many.
that the faculty have just been all over, recognizing that they can utilize these year-round, not just in the warmest days of early school year or late school year, but really throughout the school year at all.
Exactly. When we engaged the staff and administration in a discussion about how some really successful school environments across the country were utilizing not only the indoor learning environments, but also the outdoor learning environments. At first, you know, it was suggested, well, this is New England, it's cold a lot of the year, et cetera, but that's only if you think about that outdoor environment in the old traditional sense of, oh, we're going to have an outdoor classroom. And certainly an outdoor classroom is a good thing, but the ability to have indoor-outdoor connections goes well beyond that. And as we began to engage, for example, the science department, and they talked about their analysis of winter conditions and the snow and the snowfall and the weight of snow and all of the properties of snow and how that ties into some of their science programs and their ability to go outdoors and analyze a lot of different elements and to have some natural water collection areas and have some environmental displays, et cetera, that might be part of the outdoor learning classroom. We began to see that they have an enormous amount of existing educational program that can benefit hugely for us if we break down those barriers between indoor and outdoor. And it shouldn't be as if you're having to take your classroom and move them out of a very defined space, down a hallway, through a door, outside. The transition between the classroom indoors and the classroom outdoors should be seamless in a way that just happens naturally. And it's happening all over the country. And this building, with the input of the staff and administration, is designed to achieve that. And outdoors, those indoor-outdoor connections have a sort of side benefit of bringing a lot of natural light into the educational environment. And we've known for years that there are a lot of environmental quality factors that influence learning that have to do with classrooms that have lots of natural lighting and have lots of natural ventilation and other things.
Yeah, that's very, very well put. We've come a long way since I went to grade school, St. Stanislaus School. But let me just get some dates now. Pending approval by the city council and all these votes, when did we say that the middle school would be started to be torn down?
We're looking at January of next year, January
Okay.
2016, for beginning demolition.
Okay.
Completed over, it's about 2 to 3 months. Followed by the preparation of the substructure, which will be the piles, whatever needs to go down into the bedrock. That preparation will take 3 to 4 months into the summer, and then the erection of the structural steel. I guess after the substructure, then the foundation's laid over that, and then the structural steel. So the goal is to get everything done and the structural steel work well underway before next winter. That work can take place during the winter. You don't really want to do some of the other. If we, for example, still had to do foundation work during the winter, it greatly increases costs and it slows down the production.
Yeah.
So that's the goal, is to get those steps. The AI3's design development work in the coming months, demolition of memorial, substructure work, foundations laid, and structural steel begun by next winter.
Right. And again, for our viewers, the date that we expect that the school will be ready for students to come in is what, Mike?
We're planning a September 2018 opening, and that will be for the new 5 to 8 middle school, and it'll be for the elementary schools to be reconfigured as K through 4. So the goal is to have the school done by the end of that prior school year, That's our goal, so that we can use the summer to get the staff moved in and everything set up.
Right. Yeah. Very exciting. Very exciting. Well, let me ask you any final comments, any final thoughts? We've covered a lot of area here. Mike, any final?
Sure. If I could just go back to the numbers for a minute.
Sure.
There was something asked earlier that I want to make sure people understand. MSBA has, over several years, they've been reimbursing at levels that are kind of reflective of what they advertise. You know, they say that they reimburse us at about a 52% level. We add on, it can get up to 56 or 57%. At the same time, they have a cap on what they'll pay per square foot of building cost. It hasn't been problematic for years because with the economy being kind of flat, the cost of labor and materials was flat. What's happened in the last couple of years is economy improves, there's more construction going on, private sector as well as public, and those costs have increased. MSBA has not been able to keep pace. So they're reimbursing on our project at $299 per square foot of building, but the cost is going to be in the I think we've got it down to 387 dollar per square foot. This is with every school project that's out there and happening. Everybody's experiencing greater costs as a result of those increases, and MSBA not participating as robustly as they did. It's not just Beverly, it's everybody. What it does mean, though, is that we're going to bear more like 58% of the cost, and they're going to bear about 42%. So just so the numbers don't confuse people, that's the reality today for every school project out there. We have a price tag of about 60 million. MSBA is expected to contribute about 49. The cost on the project right now is 109. Every dollar that we can save between now and the end of the project is our savings, because MSBA has already kind of hit that cap for what they'll give per square foot. So the city's cost is 60 million until we can make it less. And you know, part of the reason we've been excited about our team is that they are the best, and they all have track records of controlling costs and reducing costs during the course of their projects. So just you know, so people understand the nuts and bolts of it. What Brian talked about earlier, we can afford this project. We will afford this project. We'll continue to deliver the quality services throughout this community that people count on. In other words, our operating budget won't suffer for funding this capital project. And as soon as we take on this capital project, we're looking towards the next one. Any municipality, 40,000 people, school buildings, public safety buildings, municipal buildings, roadways, infrastructure, any healthy municipality is continually investing in and upgrading its infrastructure. That's what we're doing here, and it all fits and it all works. We're excited about every bit of it.
Very good. Now, if folks have questions, our viewers or any citizens of Beverly have any questions, can you give us, I think we're going to put up a phone number, the City Hall phone number, and internet,
well, my email address, and then the phone number to my office that would reach Martha Lewis, my secretary.
Okay, there we go.
So that's there on the screen now.
Okay, and then email address as well. Are we going to show that as well? Sure. There we go. And Mike promised to answer personally every email, right?
Absolutely.
That comes in regarding this project. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been very informative, and I hope our viewers have enjoyed it. Mayor Mike Cahill, Mayor Beverly, Brian Ailes, who is the Municipal Finance Director, and Scott Dunlap, who is a principal and partner of AI3 Architects. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
And I would like to thank our viewers. You have been watching City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Thank you for joining us.